Good afternoon, Valerie Milano here with the Hollywood Times. I'm in Palm Springs right now, and I want to welcome our guest today, and he will introduce himself. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Ward Kamel. I am the writer-director of a film that played at Palm Springs Short Fest called If I Die in America.
Yes, and I'm one of the lucky ones that got to see the short film. A young man fights for a chance to grieve his husband after his traditional Muslim in-laws demand their son's body be sent back to the Middle East mere hours after the untimely death. The musical soundtrack is strategic. The cinematography is dark and brooding, and the cast is impressive for If I Die in America. A wonderfully complex story, yet one I think we can all identify with and understand. Do these circumstances happen often, Ward? What was your inspiration for the story?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of comes from a personal place. So, I was born and raised in the Middle East. I'm Syrian originally, and I lived in Dubai for a while. And I moved to New York City, where I am now in Brooklyn, almost 9 years ago. It's been 8 years at this point. But when I moved to New York, it was 2016, and the sort of quote unquote Muslim ban happened around then. And as a result, I didn't really get a chance to leave the country for 6 years. I didn't see my family for 6 years. And over those 6 years, I remember at one point I started thinking, and I'm pretty young, knock on wood, but like what would happen if I died out here? I hadn't really seen again my family in years and years. And it's sort of a morbid thought, but I feel like I couldn't really help but eventually get there when you feel like you're a little bit stuck in this place that is especially at the time, didn't feel like home. So out of those sort of morbid thoughts and out of some of that kind of, yeah, like wondering what really would happen, I was also, I think, the sort of idea really opened up when I really started to consider the fact that traditionally, I'm Muslim, I was raised Muslim, traditionally in Muslim burial rites, the burial ought to occur basically within 24 hours, if not less, like at the very most 24 hours. That's usually how Muslims go about burying their loved ones. It's really, really quick. There's not much sort of pomp and circumstance, and it's supposed to happen the day of. And then obviously the mourning period lasts longer, but the burial itself is really sort of, for the lack of a better term, pretty rushed. Um, it's a very hot region of the world, so that might have something to do with it. Just thinking about it, sort of, I did some research, and a lot of his sort of anthropologists point to that maybe being a factor because it's the same in Judaism. But anyway, so the idea that I couldn't really leave, coupled with the fact that I knew that if I did die, my family would want me to be buried according to Muslim funeral rites, that sort of started becoming interesting because it's like, okay, well, if I did die, my body would have to be shipped, sort of, if it's going to happen in accordance to Muslim burial rites, immediately, right? Like within the hour. And then again, the story sort of opened up again when I started wondering what that would be like if you play that against the context of something that I think all of us can relate to, which is when you experience grief, the last thing you want to do is rush through it, right? You want to sort of delay it. You want to hold on to it, especially in the Western tradition of grief. Like even when you're talking about open caskets, it's starkly different. So how would that tension play out? And then, yeah, last but not least, obviously queerness in Islam, and that's something that I deal with a lot in my work, and this was just sort of the last sort of piece of the puzzle that really allowed me to unlock it. Like you said, it's pretty complex, but the dream is that you get really, really specific. And then in that specificity, there's like a sort of universality because ultimately we're all people. And so if you can relate to a character struggle and they come off as like a real person, then at least in the sense that you're both human beings, you can then start identifying with that story.
Yeah, like you said, according to Muslim practice, burial should occur within 24 hours of death. For this couple, there is a dark truth that one man wants to honor while the dead man's family was to erase. This has to be a hard road to travel for gay Muslims. I know you've talked a little bit about it. Is there anything else you want to say about that part?
I mean, I feel like the conversation is evolving, and more than ever, I feel like there's younger generations of Muslims out there that are either queer or queer allies that are beginning to sort of question the elder generation's longstanding positions. And it's really, on one hand, super exciting. On the other, fertile ground for storytellers and artists. And yeah, I mean, I hope that at the very least, this, even if it starts sort of one conversation for one Muslim person or specifically a Muslim queer person to open up a dialogue with their family or their loved ones, and that's, it's mission accomplished. And I feel like often these conversations are really difficult to start. I can speak from experience. They're really, really kind of difficult to have. And so being able to have these conversations through sort of a shared artistic experience, whether it is going to watch yourself represented on screen and then wanting to share that story, if that can be an in, then, that's incredible. And I feel like myself included, there's a lot of artists and storytellers and filmmakers out there today that are really trying to have these sort of conversations play out on screen as
Mm.
almost a form of exposure therapy, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about it for hours. And I encourage, I mean, always, always, always like the most important thing is dialogue. Agreement isn't necessarily as important as just talking. It's okay if you disagree. And I think that that's something that is sort of plays out in the film where the idea isn't to paint anyone as right or wrong necessarily, but just to sort of point out that as soon as you start talking, you can get someplace. But if you're ignoring each other or no one party doesn't want to listen to the other, then that's when it can get really kind of stalemated and yeah, yeah.
I should find this interesting as this is peripheral to what families here treat their gay and transgender children after they die by covering up or detransitioning them. Islam is a bit more rigid in its traditions than Christianity. What is the result for the family and the deceased? Is this tradition ignored?
I'm actually not entirely sure. I also don't know if I'm the authority here. But I can say at least that in the Middle East and in Muslim communities and Arab communities, there's a lot. I mean, like a lot of other religions, there's a lot of sort of gray areas and different countries within the Middle East have their own different burial rites and funeral rites that may or may not intersect with sort of the religious aspect of it, because there's also an entire other cultural aspect to it that may or may not have to do with sort of Islam. But yeah, I don't know if I'm I don't know if I'm
Okay,
the
I
authority
got it.
here. I do know that I'm just going to go ahead and plug a short film that I watched and I loved, and it was incredible. I'm not remembering exactly the name of it right now. I think it's called Our Sons and Daughters, but I'll follow up with that short film. It's about a transgender, I believe, Pakistani woman who dies, and then it's all about this tradition that we have in Islam where the members of the same sex of the family need to wash the body. It's called ghusl in Arabic. And the short film is all about a debate on whether the father of the young trans woman needs to wash her body or the mother. And it's incredibly, incredibly moving. So I'll make sure to send it to you and then maybe it can be sort of called out. Yeah.
Okay, and that was at this short film festival
No,
in Palm Springs?
no, I think it did most of its run
Okay,
last year.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Gil Perez Abraham is wonderful as the grieving spouse, and Hannah Shamoun, if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, excuse me,
Yeah.
turns in an awesome performance as the intermediary. Tell us about your casting or your cast.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, first of all, I agree. They're incredible actors. Thank you for saying that. They were like incredible to work with, both obviously because of their performances, but just on set, like a dream, a director's dream. The casting process was relatively straightforward. I sort of knew about Hannah, who plays the intermediator. I'm struggling with that word too.
Yes, it's hard to say, I know.
Yeah. I sort of knew someone that knew her, and it was a little bit of like a friend of a friend situation where I had sent the script to a few people and they recommended her. And I think it was offer only. I don't even know if we auditioned her, but because I had seen her in a previous short film called Salam by Claire Foy, I think, which is also an incredible short. Um, so she was just sort of an immediate lock. With Gil, it was a tiny bit more of like a actual casting call that we worked with a casting director. Her name is Emily Rucker. Really, really incredible casting director that the sort of call to action for her was just to find the lead, because I felt that I could handle everyone else, since everyone else has sort of Arab backgrounds, and I know a lot of the Arab actors in New York, but with Gil, the lead, I really wanted to make sure that we were doing the due diligence of not just leaning on my network. And Emily sent Gil over. Again, it was offer only, but we got the chance to sort of hop on a Zoom and make sure that he also felt that we were a good fit for him. And that Zoom was supposed to be like 30 minutes, and I think it ended up lasting 3 hours or something. It was just immediately so clear to both of us that we both really cared very deeply about the story. As soon as I closed that Zoom call and I felt like, okay, it was going to be Gil, I also went back to the script and like rewrote half the lines, because I started picturing him in my head, and he really unlocked a lot for me, I'd say. And then subsequently, we just had like many lunches and many coffee sort of rendezvous where we would be able to sit down and talk. We didn't really do a very traditional rehearsal process. We both kind of subscribed to doing that on set, making sure that you're scheduled for that and trying to find, that first take not feeling rehearsed. But it was just a lot of conversations. So yeah, that was kind of how we went about it, and they delivered and then some.
Piano music that plays sparsely at key moments during the film really helps create and punctuate the somber mood of the film. How did you make that decision to spurn a traditional soundtrack?
Yeah, so I love classical music. I always have and always will. It's in a lot of my shorts. And that piece specifically, it's a Bach piece. There's this Japanese pianist. I'm also probably going to butcher her name, Kimiko, forgetting her last name. She's also an Olympic weightlifter, very randomly, but she had very famously had recorded a lot of Bach's Goldberg variations, a lot of his fugues, sort of a really, really big body of work of Bach's compositions, and then uploaded it completely independently to the Creative Commons website for public use. And I remember sort of listening to a lot of her recordings much like a long time ago, way before I made this film. And I've just always been in love with her recordings, not just because they're copyright free, but also because I really think that her voicing is some of the best Bach recorded of all time. And I'm a big, big fan. And partly sort of as I was writing the script, the age-old adage of writing what you know continues to be true. And that scene, particularly where that music plays, it's just the scene when Samir and Manny, the two main characters, they're in a relationship and they're just sort of hanging out while Samir's on the phone. And I feel that a big, big chunk of my life is spent hanging out with this music playing. I usually am always playing some sort of classical music around the house. And so it just felt like the natural thing to write in. I didn't really pick the piece until we started getting into the editing room, and we were trying different things out. And then I remembered sort of Kimiko's, because the idea was to put in a piece and then maybe record it. But I remembered Kimiko's Bach interpretations, and we put it in as a temp, and we just started falling in love with it. And eventually it was like, well, you know what? We can use it. It's on the Creative Commons website, and she's given free reign to anyone who wants to use it, as long as it's not, like on a streaming service or anything. So yeah, we went for it, and I really, really love that piece. I still listen to it sometimes, yeah.
That's good. Well, so are you back in New York or are you still here in Palm Springs?
I am back in New York. That's where I'm based out of, in Brooklyn. But I will be going back out to LA for another festival run. I'm not sure I can announce which one just yet, but yeah, I'll be back and forth. But yeah, currently in Brooklyn.
Okay. Well, too bad I missed you, but what'd you think of the festival?
I loved it. It was incredible. I mean, it's so special. The festival we did prior to this was South by Southwest, and
Yeah.
obviously that's an incredible festival experience, but it's shorts and features and panels and talks and music and games and live experiences, and so it was a lot of things, and shorts was just one of them, right? And that's special in its own way for sure, because we got to interact with a lot of feature filmmakers, and we got to interact with musicians, but Palm Springs was just really, really cool because it was just shorts. So, everyone you were meeting was a shorts filmmaker. You didn't feel like the festival's babies, like we were like at South by, it sometimes felt like we were at the kids' table. And again, in a really special way, because you're getting to meet, your idols. But at Palm Springs, it was great because it's just a celebration of the short form, and that's rare and really special. So yeah, I loved it.
Well, I'm glad you contacted us, and I'm glad we contacted you back. And we're the Hollywood Times Official is our YouTube channel, And it's hollywoodtimes.net is our website. The Hollywood.times is our Instagram. And how can we find you and more about your film for our readers and our viewers?
Yeah, so my website is just wardkamel.com or ward-kamel.com, either work. So that's my first name, Ward, last name is Kamel. The joke that I say is that it's like camel with a K. And then my Instagram, I believe, is just ward.kamel, at ward.kamel. So yeah, you can find me on either places. And yeah, I can't wait to eventually release the film. We're releasing it online in October, I think, depending on some hush hush festival stuff. But yeah, it'll soon be online, and I'm sure my website, my Instagram would point you towards it.
Great. And it's called If I Die in America. So our article will be out any day now with this video, and I appreciate your time today so much. And
Thanks.
hopefully we can meet in person next time.
Yeah, thank you.
All
Yeah,
right.
look forward to the next one. Okay, have a
Thanks.
great day.
Thanks. You too, sweetie. Bye-bye.